Hey guys, tonight we are going to take a very quiet, very somber walk back in time. We're heading to 19th century London. But we won't be visiting any grand ballrooms or discussing palace intrigue. Instead, we're going to explore the life of one of the city's most iconic and tragic figures, the chimney sweep. Specifically, the small children known as climbing boys. It's a story that unfolds in the suffocating darkness behind the cheerful, crackling hearths of Victorian homes. A heads up, if you were actually in the story, your chances of a long and happy life would be, let's just say, statistically insignificant. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support truly means the world. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where you're all listening from tonight. Drop your city and the current time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill to see how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Breathe in. The air in this version of London has a taste. It's gritty, metallic, and it coats the back of your throat. This isn't the clean, crisp air you know, it's an atmosphere thick with the exhalations of a million coal fires. This is the lifeblood and the poison of the Industrial Revolution, a haze of progress and pollution that hangs over the city like a greasy shroud. Look around you. The brownstone buildings are stained with a uniform grey-black, the brickwork is perpetually dark, and every surface seems to have a fine layer of soot, like a universal dust. This is the world that needs you. It needs you because of coal. Before this era, people burned wood. Soot is fluffy, light, and relatively easy to clean. But coal is different. The soot it produces is oily, dense, and sticky. It clings to the inside of a chimney flue like tar, building up layer upon layer. And this isn't just an issue of cleanliness, it's a matter of life and death for the people living in the house. A thick coating of this coal, so properly called creosote, is highly flammable. A stray spark could ignite the entire chimney. And by extension the house, so every respectable home, every tenement, every bakery, every single building with a hearth needs its chimney cleaned regularly. This created a booming industry. But there was a problem, a peculiar architectural quirk of the age. As cities grew denser, houses were built taller and narrower. To improve the draw smoke out more efficiently, architects like the famous Adam brothers designed chimneys with multiple sharp bends and narrow passages. Some flues, especially in the grander homes, were a veritable maze, twisting and turning through the walls. A standard, straight brush on a long pole simply couldn't navigate these corners. The only tool that was flexible enough, small enough, and clever enough to clean these modern labyrinths was a living, breathing child. You are born into the bottom rung of this sprawling, chaotic city. Perhaps your father is a dockworker when there's work, or your mother takes in laundry, her hands perpetually raw. But there are too many of you. Too many mouths, too little food. The room you share with your family is cold, damp, and crowded. Survival is a daily calculation of pennies and crusts of bread. In this world, a child is not always a blessing. Sometimes, a child is a commodity, and so the idea of you is born not out of love or hope, but out of a grim necessity. The city needs its chimneys cleaned, and the cleaning requires a body no bigger than 9 inches by 9 inches in cross-section. You, at 4, 5, or 6 years old, are the perfect size. You are the key that fits a very specific, very dirty lock. The scale of this practice is something historians still grapple with. There were no official employment records for children like you. You exist off the books in the shadows. We have parliamentary reports, witness testimonies, and heartbreaking poems, but the exact number of boys who were forced up these flues is lost to the soot-stained pages of history. Was it thousands, tens of thousands over the decades? The debate isn't about whether it happened, but about the sheer, unquantifiable number of lives consumed by this trade. For every child whose story was recorded, countless others simply vanished. Their existence as transient as the smoke they were forced to chase. The world you are about to enter is one defined by this single, overwhelming fact: your size is your value. And as you huddle in the corner of your family's small room, you don't know it yet, but your future is about to arrive. It will come in the form of a man, his face and hands permanently stained black, his voice raspy from a lifetime of shouting up into the darkness. The man who comes for you doesn't look like a monster from a fairy tale. He looks tired. His name is probably something common, like John or Thomas, and HES known in the neighborhood simply as the Master Sweep. His clothes are a patchwork of worn fabric, stiff with old soot and grease. The lines around his eyes are etched deep, not from laughter, but from squinting against the sun and the grime. He carries with him a faint, ever-present smell of old smoke, damp earth, and something vaguely bitter, like burnt chemicals. He is, in his own way, a product of the same system that is about to consume you. He likely started as a climbing boy himself, one of the few who survived long enough to grow too big for the fleas and graduate to the role of master. He doesn't speak to you. His business is with your parents. You watch from a corner, perhaps clutching a sibling's hand as the transaction takes place. There's no grand ceremony, no signing of elaborate contracts. It's a quiet, desperate negotiation conducted in hushed tones over a rickety table. Your father, his face grim, avoids your gaze. Your mother might be crying silently, or her face might be a mask of hard-won resignation. This isn't about cruelty, not always. Gut-wrenching choice. They can keep you here to face slow starvation with the rest of them, or they can give you to the Master Sweep. In their minds, this is a form of apprenticeship. The Master Sweep promises them you'll be fed, housed, and taught to trade. They trade. It sounds almost respectable. He might offer them a small sum of money, maybe a few shillings, enough to buy food for a week or pay the rent. Sometimes, there's no money at all, just the promise of one less mouth to feed. The official term is indentured, meaning you are bound to serve him for a set number of years, typically 7, in exchange for training and upkeep, but in reality, you have just been sold. The legalities of this were, for a long time, horrificously ambiguous. You are a child as young as 4 or 5. The concept of you agreeing to a 7-year apprenticeship is a legal fiction, a convenient lie that society agrees to tell itself. You are property as much as the brushes and soot sacks the master owns. He is now responsible for you, but his responsibility is that of a farmer to his livestock keep you alive enough to work. There's a curious detail: some historical accounts mention the trial climb. Before the deal is finalized, a particularly shrewd Master Sweep might insist on testing you. They cheat you to a nearby chimney, a relatively easy one, and make you climb. HES not just checking if you'll fit, HES checking for spirit. Will you cry? Will you freeze in terror? Will you obey a boy who shows too much fear or defiance as a bad investment? Your parents, desperate for the deal to go through, might coax you. Just a little climb, lad. Be a good boy. That first taste of the suffocating dark, the scraping of brick against your skin, becomes your audition for a life of misery. The exact nature of these agreements is a topic of much discussion among historians. Were they seen by the parents as a genuine, if harsh, opportunity for their sons, or was it a transaction born of pure, unadulterated desperation, a social failing so profound that selling a child became a rational choice? The answer probably lies somewhere in the murky middle. There's evidence of parents trying to buy their children back after their fortunes improve. And there are equally horrifying accounts of parents selling multiple sons into the trade, fully aware of the likely outcome. One particularly bizarre and sad detail is how some children were acquired. Not all were sold by their parents. Parish workhouses overflowing with orphans and abandoned children would regularly apprentice boys to Master Sweeps. It was an easy way to get a child off their books and reduce costs. In these cases, there isn't even the pretense of a family's desperate choice. It is a cold, bureaucratic transaction. The parish beadle, a local official, signs a piece of paper, and your life is handed over. There are even stories, though harder to verify, of Master Sweeps outright kidnapping small, unattended children from the streets. In the sprawling, anonymous chaos of London, a small boy could disappear without a trace, and few would have the time or resources to look for him. So the deal is done. The shilling, if there was one, has been placed on the table. Your mother might pull you aside for a rough, fleeting hug. Your father might pat your head awkwardly. There are no grand goodbyes. This is a quiet, brutal severing. The master sweep takes your hand. His own is rough and calloused. The black grime so deeply embedded in his skin that it will never wash out. It feels less like a hand and more like a tool. You look back at your family one last time, at the familiar squalor of the room that was your whole world. Then you are led out into the street, into the grey, smoky air of your new life. You have a new master now. Your new home is not a house. It's a cellar. As the master sweep leads you away from the familiar warren of streets you knew, the city grows both grander and grimmer. You pass handsome townhouses with polished knockers and clean, curtained windows. From their chimneys, plumes of smoke curl lazily into the sky, the very reason for your existence. But you are not headed for one of these houses. Your master leads you down a narrow, down alleyway, the smell of refuse and coal dust growing stronger. He stops before a modest, soot-stained building, unlocks a side door, and gestures for you to follow him down a set of steep, stone steps. The air changes immediately. It becomes cool, damp, and heavy with the thick, cloying smell of old soot. This is your master's workshop, his storage, and your new bedroom. There's very little light, maybe a single grimy window high up on one wall, level with the street outside, letting in a sliver of grey daylight. The floor is packed earth or uneven stone flags, cold and perpetually damp. The walls are brick, sweating with moisture and stained black in patches. This place is a cave carved out of the city's underbelly. Your eyes adjust to the gloom. The room is filled with the tools of the trade. Coils of rope, long, jointed cane rods, and various sizes of stiff, round brushes are propped against the walls. But the most prominent features of the room are the sacks. Dozens of large, coarse burlap sacks are piled in the corners. They are black, heavy, and bulging. This is the fruit of the master's labor, the soot collected from the city's chimneys, waiting to be sold as fertilizer to farmers. He explains with a grunt, is your bed. There are other boys here. Maybe one, maybe two or three, depending on the size of your master's business. They are all small, like you. They emerge from the shadows, their faces pale under a permanent mask of grime. Their eyes, wide and white in the darkness, look you over with a mixture of curiosity and weary indifference. They are your new brothers, your colleagues in soot. They don't greet you warmly. They know what you are about to go through. One of them might wordlessly point you to your designated sleeping corner. You touch the sack that is to be your bed. The burlap is rough and scratchy, and a fine black dust immediately coats your fingers. When you lie on it, it's lumpy and surprisingly hard. It offers no warmth, only a pervasive, musty cold that seems to seep into your bones. This is more than just a place to sleep, it's a crucial part of your conditioning. Sleeping on the soot, your master might tell you, gets you used to it. It toughens your skin. This is, of course, a convenient myth. The real reason is that it's cheap, and it saves him the trouble of providing you with a proper bed or blanket. A strange and little-known fact about this arrangement is the supposed benefit of the soot. Some master sweeps genuinely believed, or at least claimed to believe, that sleeping on soot was healthy. It was thought to ward off vermin and disease. The constant coating of filth on your body was seen as a kind of protective layer. This grotesque inversion of hygiene is a perfect example of how the trade justified its own horrors. In reality, the soot was a slow-acting poison, and your bed was a repository of carcinogenic particles you would breathe in all night long. The routine of this new home is brutally simple. You will wake before dawn, long before the city stirs. There is no gentle waking the master's boot nudging your ribs as your alarm clock. You will be given a piece of dry bread, maybe a sip of thin, watery gruel if the master is feeling generous. Then it's out into the cold, dark streets. You will work all day, from sunrise to sunset, and sometimes longer. When you return exhausted, you will be given another medium meal before collapsing onto your soot sack. There are no evenings, no playtime, no comfort. Historians often debate the degree of agency these boys had in their own lives. Did they form friendships? Did they have their own secret codes or ways of coping? The evidence suggests they did. In the shared misery of the cellar, a rough camaraderie could form. Older boys might offer a sliver of hard-won advice to the newer ones, which chimneys are treacherous, how to brace your knees, how to call for help when you're stuck. These moments of connection were fleeting and precious, a tiny spark of humanity in the suffocating darkness. But the master sweep actively discouraged strong bonds, seeing them as a potential source of defiance. He ruled by fear and exhaustion, keeping you too tired and too hungry to think of anything but survival. As you lie on your sack that first night, the sounds of the city above are muffled and distant. You can hear the rumble of a passing carriage, the faint cry of a street vendor. It's the sound of a world you are no longer truly a part of. Down here, in the cold and the dark, surrounded by the smell of soot and the quiet, shallow breathing of the other boys, you are in a different realm. You are in a different realm. You are no longer your parents' son. You are a creature of the cellar, a climbing boy. Your real work begins. The morning after your arrival, before the first hint of dawn has touched the London sky, you are woken abruptly. Your master shoves a set of tools into your hands. You might have expected a brush or a scraper, something you could hold and use. Instead, the tools he gives you are for your own body. First, there's a small, flat cap. It's made of coarse, thick leather. He shows you how to pull it down tight over your hair, covering your ears. This isn't for warmth or for style. Its primary purpose is to protect your scalp from the roughest brickwork and to prevent a face full of falling soot from blinding you completely. It's your helmet, a flimsy piece of leather against a vertical tumble of brick and stone. Next, and most importantly, are the knee and elbow pads. But these aren't the cushion pads you might imagine. They are simple squares of thick leather or rough fabric, and you are shown how to tie them securely around your joints with string. Your master might explain, with a grunt of impatience, that your knees and elbows are your most important tools. They are what you will use to brace yourself, to find purchase, and to propel yourself upwards in the narrow flue. Protecting the skin there is paramount, not for your comfort, but to keep you functional. A boy with raw, bleeding knees cannot climb. Then comes the scraper. This is the one tool that feels like a real tool. It's a small, triangular piece of metal, usually iron, with a short wooden handle. It's for the hard work, for chipping away the dense, stubborn layers of creosote that build up in the corners and on the flat surfaces of the flue. You are taught to hold it in one hand while you brace yourself with the other, your back pressed against one side of the chimney, your feet against the other. But there is another tool, one that is rarely spoken of but universally on the skin. Your master will inspect your hands and knees. He might feel the skin and nod, or he might shake his head. A new boy's skin is too soft. It will tear and bleed on the first few climbs. This is expected. He will tell you that the pain is temporary. After a few weeks of climbing, of being scraped and debraded by the rough brick and hardened soot, your skin will toughen up. You will develop what the sweeps call the knack, or the crust, a thick, hardened layer of callous skin on your knees, elbows, and back. This process is agonizing. For the first month, you will be in constant, low-grade pain, your joints raw and weeping. A little known and rather grim detail of this conditioning involved the use of brine. Some of the more methodical master sweeps would make their new apprentices wash their rawn. The immediate sting would be excruciating, a sharp, burning agony that would make you cry out. The master would tell you it was to clean the wounds and prevent festering. But its main purpose, they believed, was to speed up the hardening process, to tan your living skin like leather. It was a cruel, folk medicine approach to a problem created entirely by the job itself. You are not given any special clothing. You will climb in whatever ragged shirt and trousers you arrived in. These clothes will be shredded within a week, torn to pieces by the constant friction. Many boys, especially in the summer, would be forced to climb with little to no clothing on at all. This was partly to prevent their clothes from snagging on a protruding brick or nail, which could be fatal. But it was also because their bodies, being smaller and more slippery without fabric, could move more easily through the tightest of spaces. Your naked skin against the cold, rough, soot-caked brick becomes your uniform. The debate among historians here is subtle but important. Was the lack of proper equipment a result of pure poverty and callousness, or was it part of a deliberate, albeit brutal, system of training? The evidence points to both. Master sweeps were poor men themselves, and providing extensive safety gear was not a financial priority. However, the narratives from former sweeps often describe these early stages as a purposeful breaking-in period. The pain, the brine, the collar using it was all seen as a necessary crucible to forge a soft boy into a functional climbing machine. The boy who couldn't endure this process was seen as weak and unsuitable for the trade. Finally, your master hands you a small blanket. This isn't for warmth. You are to hold this over your head as you enter the fireplace from the bottom, to catch the initial shower of loose soot that will fall as you begin to disturb the flue. So there you stand in the pre-dawn gloom of the cellar, a small cap on your head, crude pads on your joints, a metal scraper in your hand, and a blanket to shield you. These are the instruments of your new life. They are not designed for your safety, but for your utility. They are a testament to a world that has looked at the complex, dangerous problem of a dirty chimney and concluded that the best solution is to turn a small, terrified child into a human brush. As your master shoves you towards the door and into the waiting darkness of the London streets, you are no longer just a boy. You are a set of tools, ready for your first day of work. The first house is just like all the others you've passed, with a clean front step and lace curtains in the windows. It smells of beeswax and baked bread, a world away from your cellar. The cook lets you in through the back entrance, her face a mask of practiced indifference. She gestures towards the grand fireplace in the main room, a cavern of cold marble and iron. A large canvas cloth, the master's soot sheet, is laid out on the fine rug before it. This is it, your first chimney. Your master gives you a shove. In you go, lad. Your heart hammers against your ribs. Looking up into the fireplace is like staring into a square of absolute blackness. The air inside smells ancient and cold, a dead, stagnant smell of burnt things. You hesitate. The other, more experienced boy, if there is one with you, might give you a look that is part pity, part impatience. This is a hurdle every one of them had to cross. You crawl into the fireplace, onto the cold stone hearth. The soot sheet is pulled up around the opening, sealing you into the darkness. Now, the only light is the faint grey square of the opening behind you. Your master's voice, muffled, tells you to look up. You do. Far, far above, you can see a tiny, impossibly distant patch of lighter sky. It's your target. It looks a mile away. Now up you go, the voice commands. Use your back and knees. Go on. You have to force your small body into the flue itself. It's a tight fit, much tighter than you imagined. The bricks are cold, hard, and rough against your skin. The air is immediately thick with fine, floating sores and clogs your throat, making you want to cough. But coughing is a bad idea. A deep cough could make you lose your footing. You have to learn to take shallow, careful breaths. You try to move upwards as instructed, pressing your back against one wall and your knees against the other, inching yourself up like a worm. It's unnatural, awkward, and terrifying. Your pads slip on the greasy soot. Your fingers scrabble for purchase on the brickwork, your nails scraping and bending. With every upward shimmy, a shower of loose soot cascades down onto your head, into your eyes, your mouth, your nose. But it doesn't stop the fine powder from getting everywhere. It tastes bitter and gritty. The darkness is total. It's not just the absence of light, it feels like a physical presence, pressing in on you, disorienting you. You can't see the walls you're reclimbing, you can only feel them. Every inch is a new and terrifying landscape of rough brick, sharp-edged mortar, and the occasional, horriful sea smooth, cold feel of a dislodged stone. You are climbing blind, trusting that this tunnel leads upwards and not into some dead end. Panic begins to set in, a cold, tight feeling in your chest. You want to slide back down to get out, to breathe clean air. But you can hear your master's voice echoing up the flue from below. Keep moving. Don't stop now, you lazy you help. One of the great historical debates is about the internal experience of these boys. We have external accounts of their suffering, but what was it truly like psychologically? To be in that space, some abolitionist writers of the time tried to imagine it, describing it as being buried alive. The sheer sensory deprivation, combined with the physical exertion and constant fear, must have been a unique form of torment. It's a claustrophobia that is active, not passive. You are just in a tight space, you are struggling for your life within it. You keep pushing, fueled by fear. Your knees and elbows, even with the pads, are already screaming in protest. You scrape your shoulder against a rough patch of brick, and a sharp, hot pain tells you the skin has torn. You ignore it. You are maybe 20 feet up now, and the flue takes its first turn. This is the most dangerous part. You have to contort your body, twisting to navigate the bend. For a terrifying moment, your feet find no purchase, and you dangle by the sheer pressure of your back and knees. You feel a jolt of adrenaline, a primal fear of falling. You thrash, find a new foothold, and continue your slow, agonizing ascent. A strange and horrible detail of the climb was the sound. The only noise was your own ragged breathing, the scraping of your body against the brick, and the faint, constant whisper of falling soot. Sometimes you could hear birds chirping at the top of the chimney, a sound from another world. It was a taunting reminder of the open sky of freedom, just a few dozen feet away, but separated from you by this vertical tomb. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, you see it. The patch of sky is bigger now, brighter. You can feel a faint breath of fresh air. With a final, desperate push, your head emerges from the top of the chimney pot. You gasp, sucking in the cool, clean morning air. It's the most delicious thing you have ever tasted. You are high above the world, looking down on a sea of rooftops. For a brief, dizzying moment, there is a sense of accomplishment of survival. But it's not over. You take out your scraper, and as you were taught, you begin to chip away at the soot caked around the top of the flue. Then, you raise your voice, as loud as you can, and shout the traditional cry, "All loop." All loop. It's a slurring of all up, a signal to your master below and to the whole neighborhood that the chimney is being cleaned. It's the sound of a child who has made it to the top. Your first climb is done. Now you just have to get back down. Your relief at reaching the top is short-lived. The job is only half done. After scraping the top of the flue, you have to go back down, cleaning as you go. And then there's the next house, and the one after that. A typical day could involve 4, 5, or even more chimneys, each with its own unique set of horrors. And not all climbs will be as straightforward as the first. Sometimes, the fear is simply too much. A new boy halfway up a flue might freeze. The combination of darkness, pain, and claustrophobia can be paralyzing. You might find yourself unable to move, your limbs refusing to obey, your mind screaming. You press yourself against the bricks, sobbing quietly, convinced you are going to die there. From the bottom of the fireplace, your master can tell when you've stopped moving. He'll shout up at you first, his voice echoing menacingly, "Get a move on. I haven't got all day." When his shouts don't work, his encouragement becomes more direct. One of his most common methods is to prick your feet. He has a long, thin pin attached to the end of one of his cane rods, or he might simply use a sharp stick. He'll poke it up the chimney, prodding and jabbing at the soles of your feet. It's a sharp, surprising pain designed to shock you back into motion. You flinch, trying to pull your feet up and away, and in doing so, you are forced to climb higher. If that doesn't work, the methods escalate. The next stage is the straw fire. The master will take a small bundle of straw, or in some reported cases a gunpowder squib, place it in the hearth below you, and light it. He won't light a proper fire that would cook you alive. The goal is to create a burst of thick, acrid smoke and intense heat. Suddenly, the stale air around you becomes scorching hot and unbreathable. Your feet feel like they are on fire. The smoke rushes up the flue, choking you, burning your lungs, and blinding you. The primal instinct to escape the fire and smoke is overwhelming. You will climb. You will claw your way upwards with a desperate, panicked strength you didn't know you possessed, just to get away from the torment below. This practice, known as firing the flue, was one of the most notorious cruelties of the trade. It was condemned by reformers and horrified the public when it was described in parliamentary reports. Yet it was a disturbingly common to love the trade. Master sweeps defended it as a necessary evil, a way to save a boy who was stuck or being stubborn. In their warped logic, the pain of a small fire was preferable to the ordeal of having to break open a wall to retrieve a trapped child. One of the more peculiar and insidious forms of encouragement was psychological. An older, more experienced climbing boy might be sent up after you. He knows the tricks. He'll climb up underneath you and, with a casual cruelty born of his own trauma, will start poking you, pulling at your legs, and taunting you. Look at the baby, afraid of the dark, he might sneer. This combination of physical prodding and humiliation was often enough to break your paralysis. The shame of being called a baby by another boy, even in the pitch blackness, could be a more powerful motivator than the master's threats. Historians still debate the prevalence of the most extreme forms of this abuse. While lighting fires was certainly documented, how often did it actually happen? Was it a daily threat, or a last resort? The testimony from former sweeps varies. Some claim it was a constant terror, while others say their masters, while harsh, never went that far. It likely depended entirely on the individual master's temperament and cruelty. There was no oversight, no one to report him to. He was a god, and his methods were law. An even stranger, more heartbreaking detail comes from the folklore of the sweeps. It was sometimes said that whispering the name of a specific saint or reciting a certain charm could protect a boy in the chimney. A master might even teach a new boy a rhyme, telling him it would keep him safe. This wasn't kindness, it was a form of psychological manipulation. By giving you a charm to focus on, a little ritual to perform, he was distracting your mind from the immediate terror, channeling your fear into a repetitive, mindless action. It was a way to manage your panic without resorting to comfort or compassion. So you learn quickly. You learn that hesitation is punished. You learn that the only way to avoid the pinpricks and the smoke is to keep moving, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how scared you are. The master's encouragement teaches you to disconnect from your own fear and pain. You become a machine. Your body learns to climb even when your mind is screaming. You suppress the terror, push it down into a hard, cold knot in your stomach, and just climb. The alternative is always worse. The echo of the master's voice from below becomes the rhythm to which you work, a constant, menacing beat driving you up into the suffocating dark. After a few weeks, your body and mind begin to adapt in strange, heartbreaking ways. The raw weeping sores on your knees and elbows finally start to heal, replaced by thick, leathery calluses. Your skin, perpetually coated in a layer of greasy soot, takes on a grayish, unhealthy pallor. You are learning the trade, not through instruction, but through a brutal process of conditioning. More than anything, you are learning the language of the chimney. You start to develop an instinct, a sixth sense, for the dark. You can feel the subtle changes in the texture of the brickwork under your fingertips. A smooth patch might mean a buildup of hard, glassy creosote that needs to be scraped away. A rough, crumbly texture signals old, decaying mortar, a place where you shouldn't put too much weight. You learn to read the flow with your body. The bends and corners no longer cause the same degree of panic. You learn to anticipate them, to feel the slight change in airflow that signals an approaching turn. You master the back and knee technique, the standard method for a straight climb. For the sharper angles, you learn to contort yourself, finding leverage in ways that seem impossible. You can tell the age of a house by the feel of its flue. The older, Tudorera chimneys are often wider and straighter, a relatively easy climb. Georgian and Victorian designs are the real killers, narrow, complex, and full of sharp, right-angled turns designed to improve the draw. You also learn to listen. The sounds inside the chimney are a vital source of information. The way your scraper rings against the wall tells you about the density of the soot. A dull thud means you're hitting soft, flaky deposits, while a high-pitched scrape indicates you've reached the hard, terry layers beneath. You can even hear the nests of birds, a rustling, chirping sound that warns you of a blockage ahead. Clearing a jackdaw's nest is a common, messy task, a sudden explosion of twigs, dried grass, and panicked baby birds in the darkness. This physical intelligence is something historians can only infer from technical descriptions and anecdotal accounts. It's a form of knowledge that is written on the body, not in books. The question of how these children with no formal training could develop such sophisticated spatial awareness in complete darkness is fascinating. It speaks to the incredible adaptability of the human brain, even under the most horrific circumstances. They were, in a very real sense, napping these complex, mapping these complex, three-dimensional spaces in their minds, creating mental blueprints of the city's hidden architecture. One of the more peculiar skills you acquire is the ability to judge soot. Not all soot is the same. You learn to distinguish the dry, powdery soot from a well-maintained flue from a wet, sticky soot of a chimney that also vents laundry steam. This wet soot is particularly nasty. It clings to you like glue and makes the climb slippery and dangerous. The worst, however, is the soot from a baker's oven. It's heavy, greasy with the residue of burnt fats, and smells foul. You come to know the city's businesses by the taste and feel of their emissions. You also learn the social language of the job. You learn to be invisible when you enter a wealthy client's home, to not look at the fine furniture or the expensive food. You are a dirty secret, a necessary evil, and the homeowners want your work done with as little reminder of your existence as possible. You learn the deferential tug of the cap to the master of the house, the quiet yes, sir to your own master. A strange, sad detail of this period is the superstition that surrounded you. Because you were small, dark, and moved in mysterious ways, a certain folklore grew up around chimney sweeps. It was considered good luck to see a sweep. People might reach out to touch your sooty sleeve for a bit of fortune, or ask you to attend a wedding to bless the couple. This created a bizarre paradox. You were an outcast, untouchable, forced to live in a cellar. Yet, on the street, you were a lucky child. This belief didn't translate into better treatment or compassion. It was a superficial superstition that coexisted with the profound neglect of your humanity. People wanted your luck, but they didn't want you. And so day by day you become a master of this dark craft. The initial screaming terror recedes, replaced by a dull, constant weariness and a practiced, automatic competence. You can now climb a standard through in a matter of minutes, your movement sufficient and sure. You know how to position your blanket to catch the falling soot, how to angle your scraper for maximum effect, and how to shout or loop with the practiced cry of a veteran. You have learned the language of the chimney, a silent, tactile dialect of pain, fear, and survival. You are no longer the soft, terrified new boy. You are a professional who is maybe 6 years old. You work from before sunrise to after sunset, a grueling schedule that leaves you in a state of perpetual exhaustion. You climb, you scrape, you descend, you walk to the next house, and you do it all over again. At the end of a long, painful day, you might wonder about your reward. Your payment for this work is not in coins. You will likely never see or touch money. Your salary is paid in the most basic, brutal terms: survival. Your master is contractually obligated by the loose standards of the time to provide you with food and lodging. The lodging you already know: a pile of soot sacks in a damp cellar. The food is just as grim. In the morning you get a piece of dry bread, maybe a chunk of stale cheese, if the master's last job paid well. It's enough to quell the sharpest hunger pangs, but never enough to make you feel full. Throughout the day, you get nothing. You are fueled only by that meager breakfast and by fear. The evening meal is the main one, but it's hardly a feast. Most often it's a bowl of thin, watery gruel, perhaps with a few bits of potato or turnip floating in it. On a good day, there might be a scrap of meat or a heel of bread to go with it. You and the other boys huddle in the cellar, wolfing down your portions in a few hungry gulps. There is no conversation, only the sound of scraping spoons and chewing. Food is a source of competition. Another might try to steal from his bowl. The master overlooks this; it's part of the rough justice of the cellar. This state of semi-starvation is deliberate. A well-fed boy would grow faster. A boy who grows is a boy who will eventually become too big for the narrow flues. From the master sweep's purely economic perspective, keeping you small and thin for as long as possible is a sound business strategy. Your hunger is a tool to extend your working life. However, there is another, more immediate source of food: the kindness of strangers, or more accurately, the pity of household staff. When you finish a climb, emerging from the fireplace covered in soot, blinking in the light, the cook or a housemaid might take pity on you. They have seen you, a small, shivering, filthy child, and their conscience is pricked. They might sneak you a leftover biscuit, a meat pie, or a cup of milk. These small acts of kindness are a lifeline. The taste of a sweet biscuit after a day of eating nothing but soot and fear is a moment of pure, transcendent joy. You learn to play on this sympathy. You learn to look particularly pathetic, to shiver a little more, to let a tear trace a clean path through the soot on your cheek. It becomes a performance. Your master, knowing that a well-timed bit of charity saves him from having to feed you himself, often encourages this. He might even instruct you to look hungry for the cook. A curious and little-known aspect of your compensation was the soot itself. At the end of the day, you and your master would haul the heavy sacks of collected soot back to the cellar. This soot was not waste, it was a valuable commodity. It was sold to farmers and gardeners as a potent fertilizer, particularly good for certain types of crops. This was the master sweep's primary source of income. A master with a good reputation and a team of efficient boys could collect a significant amount, and the sale of this black gold was what paid for his lodging, his food, and any meager comforts he had. You, the one who scraped it from the walls with your own hands, see none of this profit. Your labor produces the commodity, but you are not entitled to its value. The question of what constituted a fair wage for an apprentice was a hot topic in many trades during this era. But for the climbing boys, the debate was almost non-existent. The prevailing attitude was that providing food, shelter, and training, however brutal, was payment enough. Reformers who argued that the boys should be paid a proper wage were often dismissed as sentimental dreamers. Who would manage the money for a 6-year-old? The system was designed to be self-contained and exploitative. There's a strange irony here. The soot that coats your body, that you breathe into your lungs, that you sleep on at night, is the very substance that generates the wealth in this microeconomy. You are literally living inside the source of your master's profit. The line between worker tool and product becomes hopelessly blurred. So your daily wage, is this a roof that is a cellar, a bed that is a bag of poison, and food that is just enough to keep you alive to work another day? Anything more is a bonus, a scrap of charity earned through a performance of misery. You fall asleep on your soot sack, your stomach aching with a familiar dull hunger. You don't dream of toys or playing in entire meat pie, just for you. In the world of the climbing boy, that is the ultimate fantasy. Not all chimneys are created equal. You quickly learn that each one is a unique puzzle, a new map of potential dangers to be navigated. The city's architecture, in its rush towards density and efficiency, has created a subterranean world of brick-lined tunnels, and you are its unwilling explorer. The simple, straight floors of smaller cottages are the easiest jobs, a quick up and down. But the grand townhouses of the wealthy are another matter entirely. These houses are status symbols, and their architects were fond of showing off. This meant more fireplaces. A single large house could have a dozen or more, one for every major room. Each fireplace needed its own chimney, and these flues would snake their way up through the walls, twisting and turning to avoid intersecting with each other. The result is a labyrinth. Before you even enter the fireplace, your master might try to gauge the complexity. He might look at the outside of the house, counting the chimney pots and trying to guess their paths. But the real map is inside the walls. Sometimes, multiple flues would be built into a single, massive chimney stack. They would run parallel for a while, then veer off in different directions. Inside this dark, vertical maze, it's terrifyingly easy to take a wrong turn. You could be climbing what you think is the flue for the drawing room fireplace, only to find you have accidentally crossed over into the flue for the master bedroom. If you get disoriented, you could end up trying to exit through the room full of startled, horrified strangers. More dangerously, you could turn into a flue that narrows unexpectedly or terminates in a dead-end ventilation shaft or space left by a builder's mistake. Getting lost is a constant fear. You are alone in the dark, and your only guide is the feel of the walls and the faint light from above. If you take a wrong turn, that light can disappear. You call out, but your voice is muffled by the thick brickwork. Your master, waiting at the bottom of the correct fireplace, can't hear you. Panic sets in. You are trapped in a silent, black maze, with no idea which way is up, down, or out. The internal structure of these chimneys is a subject that architectural historians study, but rarely from your perspective. They analyze blueprints and diagrams, discussing airflow and structural integrity. For you, these are not abstract concepts. They are matters of life and death. A corbel, for example, is a brick that juts out from the wall. For an architect, it's a support structure. For you, it's a welcome handhold or a dangerous obstacle that can snag your clothes and trap you. One of the strangest and most dangerous features you might encounter is the soot door. In some of the more complex chimney systems, builders would include small iron doors at various points along the flue, usually in an attic or a hidden crawl space. These were intended to provide access for cleaning. However, they were often poorly fitted or rusted shut. For a climbing boy, a soot door could be a godsend, a chance to get out, catch your breath, and reorient yourself. If you leaned against one and it swung open unexpectedly, you could fall out into the attic. If you tried to get out and got stuck halfway, you were in a uniquely awful predicament. A particularly grim, though thankfully rare, danger was the shared flue. In some cheaper, poorly constructed tenement buildings, the fireplaces in adjacent apartments might vent into the same chimney. If a fire was lit in one apartment while you were cleaning the flue for the other, you would be trapped above a raging inferno. There are horrific, though often poorly substantiated, accounts of this happening. The historical record is filled with stories of boys getting lost or stuck for hours, even days. The famous reformer Lord Shaftesbury, in one of his speeches to Parliament, told the story of a boy who was lost in a flue for so long that his master gave him up for dead. The boy eventually found his way out through another chimney in the same stack, emerging in a different house, days later, half-starved and terrified. The debate here isn't whether boys got lost, but how they were retrieved. The most common method was brutal and destructive. The master would listen at the walls, trying to pinpoint your location by your faint cries. Once he had a rough idea of where you were, he and another workman would simply take a hammer and chisel and break through the wall of the house. This was a costly, messy business, and homeowners were, understandably, furious. The master sweep would be liable for the repairs, which is why he would resort to every other method, the prodding the fires, before taking this final, drastic step. Your life was weighed against the cost of replastering the wall. So with every climb, you are not just cleaning, you are gambling. You are betting that this particular tunnel of brick and soot is a straight path, that it won't betray you with a hidden turn or a dead end. You navigate this unseen world with a desperate, learned instinct, your small body a fragile compass in the suffocating darkness of the city's veins. Your existence is a paradox. You are essential to the comfort and safety of thousands of Londoners. Yet you are treated as if you are invisible, a piece of filth to be ignored. When you are out on the streets, walking from one job to the next, you become acutely aware of how the world sees you. You trail behind your master, a small, soot-blackened figure. Your clothes are rags, stiff with grime. Your face is a pale mask under a layer of black dust, with only the whites of your eyes and the pink of your lips showing through. You are barefoot, or your shoes, if you have any, are worn out, broken things. You are a walking advertisement for your trade, and people react accordingly. Polite society pretends you don't exist. Well-dressed ladies will clutch their skirts and pull their children closer as you pass, as if your poverty and dirt are contagious. They will avert their eyes, looking at a shop window or the sky, anywhere but at you. You are an uncomfortable reminder of the ugliness that underpins their clean, orderly world. They enjoy their warm hearths, but they don't want to be confronted with the human cost of that comfort. The shopkeepers are wary of you. If you pause for a moment to look at the sweets in a baker's window, the owner might come out and shoo you away. On with you, you'll scare off the customers. You are not a potential customer, you are a nuisance, a stain on the picturesque quality of their storefront. Other working-class people, the ones who live in the same world of struggle as your own family, might see you differently. A cart driver might nod grimly as you pass. A laundress might watch you with a look of profound pity in her eyes. They understand, in a way the wealthy cannot, the brutal calculus of survival that has led you here. They see not just the filth but the child underneath it. But they are powerless to help you. They have their own battles to fight. But it's the other children who are often the cruelest. Boys your own age, but from slightly better off families, boys with clean faces and proper shoes will see you as a target. They will shout names at you from across the street. Sooty, Blackie, Climber. They might throw stones or garbage at you. To them, you are not quite human. You are a strange, goblin-like creature that emerges from chimneys. Their taunts sting, a sharp reminder of the childhood you are not allowed to have. You learn to keep your head down, to make yourself small, to not react. Engaging with them will only earn you a beating from them, and likely another from your master for causing trouble. This social ostracism is a topic that historians find difficult to fully capture. It's an emotional state, a feeling of profound otherness. While official reports document the physical hardships, the psychological weight of being a pariah is harder to quantify. Charles Kingsley's famous novel, The Water Babies, tried to capture this by turning his climbing boy protagonist, Tom, into a literal soot-covered creature who has to be washed clean to become a real boy again. This reflects a deep-seated societal view you were not just dirty on the outside, the soot had somehow contaminated your very being. A strange and contradictory aspect of your street life is, as mentioned before, the superstition of luck. While a lady might pull her skirt away from you in disgust, a moment later a gambler on his way to the races might stop, smile, and insist on shaking your hand or touching your shoulder for good luck. He might even press a penny into your filthy hand, a coin your master will promptly confiscate. This bizarre duality is maddening. You are alternately a thing of disgust and a magical charm, a curse and a blessing. You are never, it seems, just a boy. The authorities, the London police, or peelers as they are known, generally ignore you. As long as you are with your master and not actively stealing or causing a disturbance, you are beneath their notice. You are part of the city's grim furniture. A master sweep abusing his apprentice on a public street would be unlikely to draw any official intervention, unless it was particularly egregious. It was a domestic matter, a master disciplining his charge. So you learn to navigate the city like a ghost. You stick to the alleyways and backstreets when you can. You learn to read the faces of the people you pass, to know who to avoid, who might offer a sliver of pity, and who sees you as a target. You walk through a city that depends on you, a city that you know from its highest rooftops to its deepest cellars, but you are never truly a part of it. You are a shadow haunting its edges, a small, dark spectre of its industrial progress, and the averted gazers all send the same clear message: you do not belong. There is one day of the year when the world does not look away. In fact, on this day the world stares, points, and even cheers. This is the 1st of May, May Day, the traditional festival of spring, and for reasons that are both bizarre and deeply sad, this has become the official holiday of the chimney sweeps. For the rest of the year, you are an object of pity or disgust, but on May Day, you are the star of a strange, chaotic parade. The tradition started long before your time, a relic of older folk festivals, but in the 19th century, it has become almost exclusively associated with the sweeps. Your master will wake you not with a kick, but with a sense of grim excitement. Today, there is no work. Today, you beg. You are not just a boy today, you are part of a troupe. The centerpiece of this troupe is a bizarre figure called Jack in the Green. This is a man, usually one of the older, larger sweeps, completely hidden inside a massive, conical wicker frame that is covered in green leaves, branches, and ribbons. He is a walking, dancing bush, a pagan symbol of spring plopped down in the middle of industrial London. Accompanying Jack in the Green are other characters. There's often a lord and lady of the May, usually a master sweep and his wife, dressed in mismatched finery, their faces clean for the only time all year. And then there is you. You and the other climbing boys are the main attraction. Your master will make you decorate yourselves. You might have paper ribbons tied around your arms and legs. Your face, for once, might be wiped clean of soot, only to be painted with garish colors, with bright red circles on your cheeks and a comical white mouth. You are given shovels and brushes to bang together, making a rhythmic, clattering noise. The whole troupe then proceeds to dance and parade through the streets of London. It's a cacophony of noise and color. Jack in the Green twirls clumsily, the lord and lady perform a mock formal dance, and you and the other boys leap and caper, banging your tools together and shouting. The purpose of this spectacle is to attract attention and solicit money from onlookers. Your master and the other adults will carry collection boxes, shaking them at the crowds who gather to watch the bizarre procession. The public loves it. They laugh at the dancing bush, they cheer for the mock dignity of the lord and lady, and they are particularly amused by you, the little sweeps. They see you as tiny dancing imps, comical figures of fun. They toss coins into the boxes, pennies, half-pennies, sometimes even a silver sixpence from a wealthy gentleman. It's a day of topsy-turvy celebration. The lowest of the low are for a few hours, the kings of the street. The historical origins of this are debated. Why did the sweeps, of all trades, become so associated with May Day? Some historians suggest it was a simple economic calculation. May 1st was traditionally moving day in London, when leases were up and people moved houses. This meant a lot of chimneys needed to be swept before the old tenants left or the new ones arrived, so the sweeps were busy and visible. Others see a deeper, almost pagan connection. The sweep, emerging from the dark, soot-filled chimney, a symbol of winter into the light, was seen as a kind of resurrection, a perfect metaphor for the arrival of spring. You, the climbing boy, were a grubby little Persefino, returning from the underworld. For you, the day is a whirlwind of confusion. It's the only day you are encouraged to be loud, to draw attention to yourself. The only day that people smile at you instead of scowling. You get to dance and shout, a rare release of pent-up energy, and there's often better food. The masters, flush with the day's earnings, might buy meat pies and ale for everyone. For a few hours, you are not a worker, you are a performer. But there's a dark undercurrent to the celebration. The spectacle is built on your suffering. The crowd is charmed by your small size, the very quality that makes you suitable for climbing. They are laughing at a caricature, a grotesque, decorated version of your daily misery. The money they toss is not charity to help you escape your life, it's a payment you provide. The next day, on May 2nd, the leaves will be stripped from the wicker frame, the face paint will be gone, and you will be back in the cold, dark flue. The cheers of the crowd, just a faint, mocking echo. One little-known writer of the period, reflecting on the May Day parade, called it the most heartless of all London sights. He argued that the public was essentially paying to watch a display of the instruments of child torture, prettied up with ribbons. This view was not common. Most people saw it as a harmless bit of fun, a quaint old tradition. They conveniently forgot that the small, dancing figures would spend the other 364 days of the year risking their lives in darkness and filth. The May Day parade was a perfect example of Victorian sentimentality, the ability to feel a fleeting, picturesque fondness for the poor without any genuine desire to change the conditions that made them so. The soot is more than just dirt, it's a second skin. It works its way into every pore, under your fingernails, into your hair, until it feels like a permanent part of you. You have a constant, gritty taste in your mouth and a persistent, rasping cough. But the most shocking aspect of your life to a modern observer would be the complete and utter absence of washing. You do not bathe, not daily, not weekly, not even monthly. The concept of regular washing is a luxury you cannot imagine. There are several reasons for this, ranging from the practical to the horrifically misguided. Firstly, there's no facility for it. Your home is a cellar. There is no running water, no bathtub, no soap set aside for you. Your master is not going to waste precious fuel heating water just to wash a climbing boy, who will be black again an hour into the next day's work. From his perspective, it's a pointless, expensive exercise. You are a tool, and you don't wash a hammer after every use. Secondly, you are kept in a state of perpetual exhaustion. When you finally stumble back to the cellar after a 14-hour day, the last thing on your mind is washing. Your only desires are for food and sleep. The energy required to find water, to scrub at your own filthy skin in the cold and dark, is more than you can muster. But the most insidious reason is the prevailing belief, held by many master sweeps, that being clean is actually bad for you. They developed a twisted form of trade-specific medical advice. They would argue that the thick layer of soot and grease on your skin acted as a protective barrier. It supposedly seasoned your skin, making it tougher and less scrapes and cuts you received in the flues. They might even claim it kept you warm in the winter, a kind of natural insulation. This led to a particularly bizarre and cruel piece of folklore, the idea that washing could make a sweep sick. A boy who was washed was thought to be more susceptible to colds and fevers. he would catch his death, they'd say. This myth was a convenient justification for neglect. By framing hygiene as a health risk, the masters absolved themselves of any responsibility to provide it. It was, they could argue, for your own good that you remained filthy. The historical debate around this is subtle. Did the masters genuinely believe this nonsense? Or was it a self-serving lie? The answer is likely a mix of both. In an era before germ theory was understood, folk beliefs about health were powerful. These men, likely uneducated and raised in the same trade, would have inherited this wisdom from their own masters. It aligned perfectly with their economic interest, so they had no incentive to question it. For them, it was just common sense. The social consequences of this filth are profound. Your smell precedes you. It's not just the smell of soot, but of stale sweat, unwashed bodies, and damp clothes that never truly dry. It's a smell that marks you as an outcast, that makes people shrink away from you on the street. It's the smell of the cellar, and you carry it with you everywhere. There are rare, fleeting encounters with cleanliness. Sometimes on a hot summer day, if a job takes you near the Thames or one of London's canals, your master might let you and the other boys strip off your rags and jump into the filthy water. This isn't for hygiene, it's a brief respite from the heat. The water itself is a brown, polluted soup, but the feeling of being submerged, of washing away the top layer of grime, is a moment of shocking pleasure. You emerge from the water still dirty, but feeling lighter, your skin tingling. Another odd, incidental form of washing could happen on the job. If you were sent to clean the flue of a laundry, which had its own copper boiler, the chimney would often be damp and steamy. Climbing it would leave you wet and dripping, a sort of accidental steam cleaning. You'd emerge wetter and colder, but fractionally cleaner for a few moments before the next dry, sooty flue claimed you. The only time you are deliberately cleaned is for the May Day parade, as we've seen, and even then it's a superficial affair. Your master might take a wet rag and scrub your face, leaving the rest of your body untouched. The contrast between your freshly scrubbed face and your grimy neck and hands is stark and strange. So you live in a world without the simple comfort of being clean. You sleep in dirt, you work in dirt, and you eat with dirty hands. The constant irritation of the soot on your skin is something you just get used to, a low-level discomfort that never goes away. You forget what it feels like to have truly clean skin, to not have grit in your hair and under your nails. The filth becomes your identity, the uniform you can never take off. It's the most visible sign that you belong to the world of the chimney, and not to the clean world outside. The work is a routine of calculated risks, but sometimes the calculation fails. Gravity is a constant, impartial threat. A moment of carelessness, a patch of slippery soot, a crumbling brick, and you fall. A fall inside a chimney is not like falling in an open space. It's a chaotic, scraping, bouncing descent. You don't plummet cleanly, you tumble, your body ricocheting off the narrow walls of the flue. The sound is a horrifying mixture of your own choked cry, the thunderous scraping of your body against brick, and a cascade of dislodged soot and debris. Let's imagine it. You are 40 feet up, nearing the top. You're tired. Your arms and legs ache, and your focus wavers for just a second. The knee you thought was securely braced slips on a greasy patch of creosote. Your other points of contact can't hold your weight. For a terrifying, weightless moment, you are suspended in the blackness, and then you are going down. Your body instinctively tries to stop the fall. Your fingers claw at the walls, but the brick is too hard, the soot is slick. Your nails bend back and break. You try to spread eagle, to press your back and knees against the walls to slow your descent, the technique you use for climbing, but in reverse. Sometimes this works. You might manage to slow yourself, to regain a precarious foothold, your heart hammering, your body screaming with scrapes and bruises. You take a moment to collect yourself, your breath coming in ragged, terrified gusts, before resuming your climb, or more likely, carefully sliding the rest of the way down. But if you are in a wider section of the flue, or if you are falling too fast to react, this braking maneuver is impossible. You will fall the entire distance. The fall might be broken by a bend in the chimney, a brutal impact that can't twist a limb or snap a bone, wedging you painfully in the turn, where you might fall all the way to the bottom. You land in a heap on the hearth, in a cloud of soot and dust. The impact knocks the wind out of you, a jarring shock that reverberates through your small frame. The pain is immediate and overwhelming. It could be a broken leg, a fractured arm, or worse. Your master's reaction is not one of sympathy. It's one of anger and inconvenience. A fallen boy is an injured boy. An injured boy cannot work. You are now a liability. He will pull you out of the fireplace, cursing your clumsiness. I'll perform a quick, rough assessment of the damage. A few scrapes and bruises, you'll be yelled at and sent up the next chimney, pain or no pain. But a serious injury, like a broken bone, is a disaster for him. He has no medical knowledge. He might try a crude form of first aid, perhaps tying a piece of wood to a broken limb to act as a splint. More likely, he will do nothing. He won't take you to a doctor that costs money. You will be taken back to the cellar and left on your soot sack to heal or not. The other boys will watch you. Their faces a mixture of fear and a grim better him than me relief, since you are no longer earning your keep. The historical records, particularly hospital admission logs from the period, show a steady stream of children admitted with injuries consistent with falls from a height, complex fractures, head injuries, internal damage. For every boy who made it to a hospital, there were likely many more who were simply left in the cellar, their injuries healing badly, leaving them crippled or with a permanent limp. A strange and lesser-known danger related to falls was not the fall itself, but what you fell into. At the bottom of some flues, particularly in larger kitchens, there might be a soot box or a collection pit. This was a space below the level of the hearth where soot would accumulate. If you fell into one of these, you could be buried in several feet of fine, powdery soot. It would be like falling into a silo of black sand, and you could suffocate before your master even realized you had fallen. The question of how often these falls happened is, like so much of your life, a matter of historical speculation. The master sweeps would never report such incidents. The boys themselves were in no position to complain. It's only through the records of reformers, doctors, and the occasional newspaper article about a particularly tragic case that we get a glimpse of the frequency. It was an accepted risk of the job, a routine part of the trade that left most sweeps with a collection of old, poorly healed injuries by the time they were teenagers. If you survive a fall and your injuries are not too severe, you are changed. You climb with a new, heightened sense of terror. Every foothold is tested 3 times. Every patch of wall is assessed with a desperate focus. The memory of that weightless, scraping, tumbling descent is seared into your mind. It becomes another ghost to join the darkness, the claustrophobia, and the master's voice in the long list of things you must conquer every time you enter the flue. The fall doesn't just break your bones, it breaks a piece of your spirit, replacing it with the cold, hard certainty of your own fragility. There is a fate that you and every other climbing boy fear more than falling, more than the master's punishments, more even than the daily pain. It is the fear of getting stuck. The climbers have a name for it: jammed. It happens when the flue narrows unexpectedly, or when you try to navigate a sharp bend and misjudge the angle. One moment you are moving, and the next you are not. You are held fast, the rough brick pressing in on all sides. You try to push forward, but you can't. You try to wriggle back, but your clothes have snagged, or your own limbs are now wedged against each other. You are pinned, held in the unyielding grip of the chimney. The first reaction is a surge of pure primal panic. Your heart feels like it's going to explode. Your breath comes in short, sharp gasps, which only makes your chest expand and wedges you in tighter. The darkness, which was merely an environment before, now feels like a tomb that is actively trying to crush you. It's the horrifying sensation of being buried alive, but vertically. You shout for help. Your voice is small and tight, absorbed by the soot and brick. Master. I'm stuck. I'm jammed. The words echo weirdly in the confined space. You wait, your ears straining for a response. Down below, your master hears the muffled cry. His first reaction, as always, is irritation. A jammed boy means a long, costly delay. He will shout instructions up to you. Try turning sideways. Pull your knees up. You try to obey, contorting your body in the tiny space, but it's no use. Every movement seems to wedge you in more firmly. The rough brick scrapes your skin raw as you struggle. The panic begins to curdle into despair. You are completely helpless. Your fate now in the hands of the man at the bottom of the flue. If you are not too far up, the master might try to rescue you himself. He might send another, smaller boy up after you. This is a terrifying prospect. The other boy will climb up underneath you, into the space already cramped by your presence. He will try to push you from below, or guide your legs into a position that might free you. You can feel his hands on your feet, hear his breathing just below you. But if he gets stuck too, the situation becomes a nightmare. Two boys jammed in a single flue. If that fails, the master must resort to the option he dreads, breaking open the wall. As we've discussed, this is the last resort. He must first locate you. He will go up into the house, pressing his ear against the walls on the upper floors, calling your name. "Boy, where are you?" shout. You hear his voice, faint and distorted, coming from the side. You shout back, your voice raw with fear. "Here, him here." He taps on the wall. Here he calls. "Yes," you scream. Then you hear a new sound. A chisel biting into plaster, a heavy hammer striking the chisel. The vibrations travel through the brickwork into your trapped body. It's the sound of rescue, but it's slow, agonizing work. It can take hours. All the while, you are stuck in the same cramped, painful position, in the dark, with the dust and debris from the demolition raining down on you. You might start to lose feeling in your limbs. The air grows stale and thin. The psychological torment of this experience is something that many historical accounts touch upon. The combination of physical constraint, sensory deprivation, and the slow passage of time is a unique form of torture. Some boys would reportedly lose consciousness. Others would babble or sing to themselves to keep the terror at bay. The question of what long-term psychological scars this left is one that historians and psychologists can only speculate on. It's a trauma that defies easy description. A particularly grim detail, recorded in the testimony for the Chimney Sweepers Regulation Act, is what happened if a boy couldn't be saved. In the worst-case scenarios, a boy would get so thoroughly wedged, or the chimney structure so complex, that he was unreachable. The opening in the wall would be bricked back up, and the flue sealed. The chimney and the house would become his tomb. These incidents were rare, but they were the ultimate horror story for the sweeps, a cautionary tale told in hushed, terrified tones in the cellars at night. But let's say you are one of the lucky ones. After what feels like a lifetime, a hole of light appears in the brick wall next to you. Hands reach in, pulling away the debris. They grab you, pulling you out of the darkness and into the light of the room. You are freed. You are covered in soot, blood, and the dust of the wall, trembling and weeping. The homeowners look on in horror and disgust. Your master pulls you to your feet. There is no comfort, no hug, no kind word. He is furious about the cost of the repair. He might cuff you on the head for your stupidity. And if you are physically able to, you will be expected to work the next house. The business must go on. Your body is a living record of your profession. Long after the scrapes and bruises from a fall have healed and the terror of being jammed has faded to a recurring nightmare, your work is leaving permanent, indelible marks both on your skin and beneath it. The most obvious change is the one you see every day if you ever catch a glimpse of yourself in a shard of glass or a puddle. Your skin is never truly clean. The soot works its way so deep into the pores and creases of your hands, face, and neck that it becomes a form of tattooing. Even if you were to scrub for an hour, a faint, grayish undertone would remain. The lines on your palms are etched in black. This is the soot stain, the mark of your trade. Then there are the calluses. Your knees and elbows are no longer soft skin, they are thick, leathery pads, discolored and tough. They are a form of natural armor, developed through countless agonizing climbs, but they are also a deformity. They can make it difficult to fully straighten your arms or legs, and they can sometimes crack and bleed, opening the way for infection. Your eyes are another casualty. You spend your days in a storm of falling soot and grit. The constant irritation leaves your eyes perpetually red-rimmed and inflamed. You are always blinking, trying to clear away the particles, This condition was so common among sweeps, it had its own informal name, soot-stained. In the short term, it's painful. It's painful. In the long term, it can lead to chronic infections and, in some cases, lasting damage to your vision. You learn to do your work by feel as much as by sight, because sight is an unreliable sense in your world. Your lungs, of course, are under constant assault. From your first climb, you have been breathing in a toxic cocktail of coal dust, creosote particles, and other pollutants. This leads to a chronic, hacking cough that sweeps called the soot-wort or chimney sweep's cough. It's a wet, ratting sound that echoes in the cellar at night as you and the other boys try to sleep. This isn't just a simple cough, it's the sign of your body trying, and failing, to clear the foreign matter from your lungs. It's the prelude to the more serious respiratory diseases, bronchitis, pneumonia, and what was then often just called consumption that would shorten the lives of so many sweeps. A little known but devastating effect of the job was on your physical growth. The combination of malnutrition, lack of sunlight, and the unnatural contortions your body is forced into every day stunts your development. You are smaller and thinner than other boys your age. Your bones, still soft and growing, can be warped by the constant pressure of climbing. You might develop a stoop posture from spending so much time hunched over, or your joints might become permanently swollen and misshapen. Sweeps who survived into adulthood were often identifiable by their stunted stature and awkward, pained gait. The job literally reshaped their skeletons. The historical debate here centers on awareness. How much did the masters and the public know about these long-term health effects, while they might not have understood the precise medical mechanisms? The evidence was right in front of them. They could see the inflamed eyes, hear the rattling coughs, and notice the stunted growth. Reformers and doctors began to publish pamphlets and reports detailing these very issues. The problem wasn't a lack of evidence, but a lack of will to act on it. These physical deformities were seen as an unfortunate but unavoidable cost to the trade. They were the price paid by you for the city's warm fires. One of the most intimate and cruel markings on your body is the chimney sweep's mark on your skin. These were not just releases. The constant friction and the carcinogenic properties of the soot could cause strange skin conditions. Sores that wouldn't heal, persistent rashes, and warty growths were common. These were often ignored or treated with useless home remedies. Your body becomes a canvas of industrial disease, each mark a testament to the toxins you live and work in. These physical changes are a slow, creeping process. You don't wake up one day with deformed joints, it happens over months and years of climbs. You get used to the constant ache in your back, the wheeze in your chest, the sting in your eyes. It becomes your new normal. But these marks serve a social function too. They are a visible, permanent sign of your caste. Even if you were to escape the trade, to wash yourself clean and wear new clothes, the slight stoop, the scarred knees, and the hacking cough would betray your past. The chimney claims you body and soul, and it leaves its brand on you for all the world to see, a brand that says you will never truly belong in the clean world you help to maintain. Of all the maladies that mark your body, there is one that is particularly sinister. It is quiet, insidious, and so specific to your trade that it was named for you. It's called chimney sweeper's cancer. This isn't a disease you would know by its scientific name. You and the other boys would only know it by its symptoms. It would start as a small, persistent sore, maybe on the skin of the scrotum. At first, you might mistake it for just another chafe, another irritation from your rough trousers and the constant friction. You'd ignore it, hoping it would go away like the other scrapes and rashes. But it doesn't go away. The sore grows, becoming a hard, warty lump that can be painful to the touch. It might ulcerate and refuse to heal. You would be ashamed of it, hiding it from your master and the other boys. It's in a private place, and there's a deep sense of shame attached to it. You would have no idea what it is. You would just know that something is terribly wrong. The man who first identified this dreadful condition was a London surgeon named Percival Alport. As early as 1775, long before you were born, he noticed a startlingly high incidence of scrotal cancer among the former chimney sweeps he treated. These were men in their 32nd and 42nd who had been climbing boys in their youth. Pot made the brilliant connection that no one had made before: the cancer was being caused by the soot. He deduced that the carcinogenic particles in the coal soot would accumulate in the folds of the skin, particularly the rugae of the scrotum. Because you never wash, these toxins would sit there for years, constantly irritating the skin, until, in some, they caused the cells to turn cancerous. It was the first time in medical history that an occupational link to cancer had been scientifically established. Pot's discovery was groundbreaking, a landmark in the fields of oncology and occupational health. But this medical breakthrough had absolutely no impact on your life. Pot published his findings, doctors discussed them, but nothing changed for the climbing boys. The information did not filter down to the masters, and even if it had, it's unlikely they would have cared or understood. The idea of something you touch today causing a disease 20 years in the future was too abstract, too far removed from the daily struggle for survival. So you continue to sleep on your soot sacks, to wear your soot-stiffened clothes, and to never, ever wash. You are marinating in the very substance that might kill you decades from now. The irony is staggering. The soot that provides your master's livelihood, the soot you are told toughens your skin and keeps you healthy, is planting a seed of death within you. The historical debate here is a frustrating one. It's not about the medical facts, which were established surprisingly early. It's about the gap between knowledge and action. Why did it take nearly another century after Pot's discovery for meaningful legislation to be passed to protect the boys? The answer lies in a complex mix of economic interests, political inertia, and a fundamental lack of empathy for the victims. The sweeps were out of sight and out of mind. The cancer they developed was a slow-motion disaster, one that was easy for society to ignore because the consequences were not immediate. A particularly cruel aspect of the disease was that it typically appeared after a boy had aged out of the profession. You might survive the falls, the claustrophobia, and the malnutrition. You might grow too big for the flus, leave the trade, and find another life as a laborer or a soldier. You might think you've escaped. And then, in your 20s or 30s, the disease would manifest. It was the Chimney's final, parting gift. The boys who did develop the telltale sores while still in the trade faced a terrible fate. Their master, seeing the ugly, unhealing growth, would likely just turn them out onto the street. An obviously sick boy was bad for business. You would be left to fend for yourself with no home, no skills other than climbing, and a terrifying disease you couldn't understand. You might end up in a workhouse infirmary, where a surgeon might recognize the condition, but where there was little they could do for you beyond offering laudanum for the pain. So you live in ignorant bliss of this specific danger. You worry about getting jammed tomorrow, not about a tumor in 20 years. The slow, cellular violence being done to your body is completely invisible. You are part of a massive, unintentional, and unethical medical experiment. The data was being collected on the operating tables of men like Percival Alport, but the subjects of the experiment, you and the hundreds of other boys like you, were never informed. You were simply the disposable data points in a study about how a city's addiction to coal could write itself onto the bodies of its most vulnerable children. The people who live in the houses you service exist in a completely different universe. To them, you are not a person, you are a function, a service provider, the sweep. They interact with your master, not with you. The transaction is simple: their chimney is dirty, and they pay your master to make it clean. The method is of little concern to them. Let's imagine the scene from their perspective. It's a chilly morning, and the drawing room fire isn't drawing properly. Smoke is puffing back into the room, staining the wallpaper and making everyone cough. The lady of the house instructs her butler to send for the sweep. Your master arrives at the back door, cap in hand, performing his well-practiced deference. He speaks to the head housekeeper or the butler. They discuss the price. They might haggle a bit. The housekeeper will complain about the soot from the last time, and your master will promise his boys will be extra careful. You stand behind him, silent and still, trying to make yourself as small as possible. You are not supposed to look at the fine furnishings or the polished floors. You are a dirty thing in a clean place, and you are expected to know your station. The servants will lay down the soot sheet with a sense of weary resignation. They know that no matter how careful you are, a fine layer of black dust will settle on everything. After your climb, they will have to spend hours cleaning up, dusting the furniture, polishing the ornaments, and airing out the room. To them, your visit is a necessary but deeply annoying disruption. Their conversations, which you might overhear from inside the fireplace, are revealing. They talk about you in the third person, as if you are deaf or an animal. Make sure the little one doesn't touch the curtains, the housekeeper might warn a maid. He looks even filthier than the last one. Sometimes there is a flicker of pity, especially from the younger maids who might be closer to your age. As we know, one of them might sneak you a biscuit. But there is also fear and suspicion. You are a stranger from the slums, entering their pristine world. They worry you might steal something. A missing silver spoon or a small trinket would immediately be blamed on you, whether you took it or not. Not for your safety, but to protect his reputation. An accusation of theft could ruin his business. The homeowners themselves, the wealthy family living upstairs, want even less to do with you. They will likely retire to another part of the house while the dirty work is being done. Their main concern is that the job is done quickly and efficiently, so their comfort is restored. They are paying for a result, a clean chimney, not for a process. The fact that this process involves a child risking his life in a dark, narrow space is an unpleasant detail they prefer not to think about. It's the great Victorian talent, the ability to compartmentalize, to separate their comfortable lives from the suffering that made them possible. This attitude is a major point of discussion for historians. Was it willful ignorance or genuine lack of awareness? The evidence suggests it was a conscious choice. The campaigns to ban the use of climbing boys were very public. There were pamphlets, newspaper articles, and public meetings. People knew. But they were caught between their conscience and their convenience. A mechanical brush, which was available, was said to be less effective on complex flues and might make more of a mess, and the master sweeps, whose livelihoods were threatened, would often tell homeowners that only a boy could do the job properly. So the homeowner could choose to believe this, assuaging their guilt. It's a dreadful business, they might say to a friend over tea, but what can one do? The chimney must be cleaned. Neighbors aren't telling detail is the occasional performance of the climb. Sometimes a curious child of the house, a boy your age but dressed in a velvet suit, might be allowed to watch you go up the chimney. He would stare with wide, fascinated eyes as you disappeared into the blackness. To him, you are a character from a story, a grimy adventurer. He doesn't see the terror, the pain, the filth. He sees a spectacle. The gulf between your two lives, standing just a few feet apart, is absolute. He will sleep that night in a warm, clean bed, while you sleep on a sack of the very soot you just scraped from his chimney. So you exist in their world, but only as a tool. They need your small body to solve their architectural problem, but they recoil from the reality of that body, its dirt, its smell, its inherent humanity. You are a paradox they cannot resolve. The source of their cleanliness is the filthiest thing they will encounter all week. Their solution is simple: to look through you, to treat you as a function, not a child, and to get you out of their house as quickly as possible so they can forget you exist. Until the next time the smoke blows back into the room. You would have no way of knowing this, but long before you were born, people had already decided that your job was cruel and should be illegal. As early as 1788, the British Parliament passed an act for the better regulation of chimney sweepers and their apprentices. It was a law designed specifically to protect children like you. The 1788 Act was prompted by a series of public outcries and the work of early philanthropists like Jonas Hanway, a man who was horrified by the stories he heard about the climbing boys. The law stated that no boy should be apprenticed before the age of 8. It also tried to regulate the master sweeps, requiring them to provide adequate clothing, food, and not to have more than 6 apprentices at one time. It even included a clause forbidding them from forcing a boy up a chimney that was on fire. The very fact that this needed to be explicitly stated in law tells you everything you need to know about the brutalities of the trade. So why, decades later, are you, a 6-year-old, still climbing chimneys? The failure of this law is a classic lesson in how good intentions can be defeated by a lack of enforcement and a wall of public and commercial indifference. Firstly, the law had no teeth. There was no official inspection system, no chimney police to check on the master sweeps. The only way for a master to be punished was if someone filed a formal complaint with a magistrate. But who was going to do that? You, the victim, were a terrified child, completely under your master's control. Your parents, who had sold you, were in no position to complain, and the homeowners, as we've seen, most preferred to look the other way. The few reformers and concerned citizens who did try to bring prosecutions found it incredibly difficult. Secondly, proving a boy's age was nearly impossible. You were born in a slum. It's very likely that your birth was never officially registered. You have no birth certificate. If your master is accused of apprenticing a 6-year-old, he can simply claim you are 8. Who could prove otherwise? You are small for your age. He would argue, due to a poor upbringing. He is a charitable man. HED say, for taking you in. Without official records, the age limit was unenforceable. This very issue, the difficulty of proving age, is a point of great interest to social historians. It highlights how the lives of the poor were undocumented. You existed outside the official narrative of the state. Your life, your age, your very identity were fluid things, defined not by a piece of paper, but by the word of the man who owned you. This lack of documentation was a key factor that allowed your exploitation to continue for so long. A more subtle reason for the law's failure was the opposition from the sweeps themselves. The master sweeps formed guilds and associations to protect their interests. They saw the law as an attack on their livelihood. They would argue with some justification that a boy of 8 was already too big for the narrowest flues. The law, they claimed, would effectively put them out of business. They became a powerful mobbing group, resisting every attempt at further reform. A strange and little-known detail is the certificate of humanity. In some parishes, magistrates sympathetic to the sweeps would issue them with a pre-signed, blank certificate attesting to their good character and the humane treatment of their apprentices. The master could then show this to any homeowner who expressed concern, using it as a shield against accusations of cruelty. It was a perfect example of the old boys' network working to maintain the status quo. Further attempts at legislation were made in the early 19th century. In 1817 and 1819, a parliamentary committee gathered overwhelming evidence of the horrors of the trade. They heard testimony from doctors like George Birkbeck, who described the boys' diseases and injuries in graphic detail. They even heard from former sweeps who told their own heartbreaking stories. The evidence was undeniable. The committee recommended a complete ban on the use of climbing boys. But the bill was defeated in the House of Lords, while the Lords argued it was an infringement on the freedom of contract. They argued that it was an attack on private property, the chimneys. They argued that people should be free to choose how their chimneys were cleaned. The sanctity of property and the principle of a free market were deemed more important than the lives of poor children. So, the law that was meant to be your shield became a ghost, a piece of paper with no power. You continue to climb, unaware that your suffering is not just a personal tragedy, but a legal and political failure on a national scale. You are living in the gap between what the law says and what society is willing to enforce, and it's a dark, suffocating, and soot-filled space. Your greatest enemy is the chimney itself, but you have a rival, an inanimate object that threatens your very existence, the mechanical chimney brush. The idea of using a machine to do your job is not new. As early as 1803, a man named George Smart invented a device that was, for all intents and purposes, the modern chimney brush. It consisted of a round brush head that could be expanded or contracted, mounted on a series of long, flexible cane rods that could be screwed together. By pushing it up the flue from the bottom, a man could clean a chimney without a child ever having to enter it. It was called the Scandiscope or Smart's climbing machine. Societies were formed to promote its use. Philanthropists and reformers hailed it as the solution, the technological fix that would make climbing boys obsolete. They held public demonstrations, showing how the machine could clean a chimney just as well as, if not better than, a small boy. They offered to sell the machines at a discount and even to train men in their use free of charge. So why are you still climbing? Why didn't this invention immediately put you and your master out of a job? The answer is a frustrating mix of technical limitations, economic resistance, and pure propaganda. Your master and the entire guild of master sweeps actively campaigned against the machine. Their livelihood was at stake. They saw the mechanical brush not as a humane innovation, but as a direct threat. They became masters of disinformation. They would tell homeowners that the machine was clumsy and ineffective. "It can't get into the corners, ma'am," your master would say, shaking his head gravely. "You need a boy to get into the angles. The machine will just ram a hole in the middle, leaving all the dangerous soot on the sides." They would claim that the stiff canes of the machine could damage the delicate plaster lining of the flue, leading to expensive repairs or even house fires. This was a particularly effective scare tactic. They also argued that the machine made a bigger mess. A boy, they claimed, could control the fall of soot more carefully. A machine, pushed from below, would send a great, uncontrolled plume of black dust billowing into the room. There was a grain of truth to some of these claims, especially with the earlier models of the brush and in the hands of an inexperienced operator. But for most standard chimneys, the machine worked perfectly well. The debate over the machine's effectiveness is a key point for historians of technology. It shows how the adoption of a new invention is not just about its technical merit. It's about social acceptance, vested interests, and public perception. The sweeps successfully framed the debate as one of quality and safety, rather than one of human decency. A particularly strange and cynical argument they used was an economic one. What they would ask would happen to all the climbing boys if they were put out of work. They would starve. Your master might tell a concerned client. They would turn to crime. We are providing them with a trade, a home. These reformers would cast them out onto the streets. It was a masterful piece of emotional blackmail, painting the masters as saviors and the reformers as heartless idealists. They used your own welfare as an argument to perpetuate your suffering. The architects and builders were also, in a way, complicit. They continued to design and build houses with the same narrow, twisting flues that only a child could navigate. There were calls for a change in the building codes to mandate that all new chimneys be built straight enough for a machine to clean. But this was resisted by builders who found it cheaper and easier to stick to the old designs. The problem was being built into the very fabric of the city, year after year. So you exist in this strange technological limbo. A machine has been invented that could free you, but it is kept at bay by a wall of resistance. You might occasionally see a rival sweep, one of the few machine men, on the street with his bundle of canes. Your master will sneer at him, calling him a charlatan. You are taught to see this man and his machine as the enemy, the ones trying to take the bread from your mouth. You don't understand the larger forces at play. You only know what your master tells you. You are proud in a strange, twisted way of your ability to do what a machine cannot. You can bend, you can feel, you can scrape. You are better than the machine. It's a small, sad source of professional pride instilled in you by the very man who profits from your misery. You become an unwitting participant in your own exploitation, defending the necessity of your own horrific job against the threat of a simple brush on a stick. Your body, which was once your parents' to care for and is now your master's to command, is slowly ceasing to be your own. The job is not just leaving marks on it, it's fundamentally reshaping it, arresting its natural course of development in ways that will affect you for the rest of your life, however long that may be. The most immediate and obvious effect is on your growth. You are always hungry. The meager diet your master provides is just enough to fuel your work, but not enough for a growing child to thrive. This chronic malnutrition, combined with the lack of sunlight from working long hours and living in a cellar, stunts your growth. At 10 or 12 years old, you might be the size of a healthy 7 or 8-year-old. This, from your master's perspective, is not a bug but a feature. The smaller you stay, the longer you can fit into the narrow flues. Your arrested development is profitable. He has no interest in seeing you grow into a strong, healthy adolescent. A growth spurt is a financial disaster for him, the end of a valuable asset's useful life. But the damage is more than just a matter of height. The work itself is deforming your skeleton. Your bones are still relatively soft and pliable. The constant, unnatural pressure of climbing, bracing your back, knees, and elbows against hard brick for hours on end starts to warp them. Your knees and ankle joints become permanently swollen and misshapen. This condition was so common it was sometimes known as sweep's knee. It's a form of bursitis, an inflammation of the fluid-filled sacs that cushion the joints, but in your case it's chronic and severe. It can lead to a permanent, knock-knee posture, making it painful to walk. Your spine is also at risk. The contortions required to get around bends, and the general posture of climbing, can lead to spinal deformities like kyphosis, a forward rounding of the back, or scoliosis, a sideways curvature. You might notice a permanent ache in your back that never goes away, a precursor to a lifetime of chronic pain. Even your eyesight, as we've touched on, is affected in a way that goes beyond simple irritation. The constant transition from the bright street to the absolute blackness of the flue, and back again, puts immense strain on your eyes. But a lesser-known problem was a condition some doctors observed called chimney sweep strabismus, or crossed eyes. They hypothesized that the effort of trying to focus in near total darkness, often looking upwards in a strained position for long periods, could permanently damage the eye muscles, causing the eyes to lose their alignment. The historical evidence for these specific deformities comes from the detailed reports of reformers and the clinical observations of surgeons. Doctors in London's hospitals became adept at identifying former sweeps just by looking at their bodies. The combination of stunted growth, inflamed joints, and a stooped posture was a clear physical signature of the trade. The debate among historians isn't whether this happened, but rather to what extent society was willing to accept this physical destruction as a normal outcome of a boy's apprenticeship. You wouldn't think of these changes in medical terms. You would only know that your body hurts. You would know that your knees are always swollen, that your back aches, that you can run as fast as the other children you see on the street. You accept it as a normal part of life, just like the hunger and the cold. The other boys in the cellar have the same aches, the same strange-looking joints. It's the shared reality of your world. These deformities are another way the job brands you for life. If you survive to adulthood and leave the trade, your body will carry the story of your childhood. You will have a stooped back. You will be unable to lift heavy loads. These physical limitations will restrict the kinds of work you can do, trapping you in a cycle of poverty. You were broken in as a child to fit the city's chimneys. And in the process, your body was broken for life. The child's body that was your primary asset becomes an adult's body that is a permanent liability. The chimney doesn't just leave you with scars, it leaves you with a fundamentally altered architecture of bone and sinew, a living monument to the price of a clean flue. In the suffocating misery of the cellar, you are not entirely alone. There are the other boys, your colleagues, your rivals, and in a strange, unspoken way, your brothers. This is the only family you have now. The relationships you form in the cellar are complex and fragile, forged in a crucible of shared suffering. In the evenings, after the meager meal has been eaten, you huddle together on the soot's axe for a brief respite before sleep. There is little energy for play, but there is time for quiet talk. An older boy, one who has been in the trade for a few years, might take you under his wing. He becomes your mentor in this dark world. He won't be soft with you, the job has burned any softness out of him, but he will give you practical, life-saving advice. He'll tell you which types of chimneys are the most dangerous. If you're at the old barrister's house on Fleet Street, he might whisper, "Watch for the third bend. It's a sharp one, and the brick is loose." He'll show you how to tie your knee pads just right, how to listen for the sound of a crumbling flue, how to hold your breath to suppress a cough when you're in a tight spot. You share a secret language, a slang unique to the trade. A difficult chimney might be a grizzler. Getting stuck is jammed. The master is the gaffer. This shared vocabulary is a small act of rebellion, a way of creating your own world with its own rules, separate from the one your master controls. You also share stories, not fairy tales but grim cautionary tales about the job. Stories of boys who got jammed, boys who disappeared. There's the story of little Jem who got stuck in a flue in a bakery and was overcome by the heat. Or the tale of Black Tom, who took a wrong turn and ended up in a sealed-off chimney, his cries unheard. These stories are terrifying, but they serve a purpose. They are a verbal manual of dangers to avoid, a catalogue of fears that you all hold in common. Sharing them makes the fears slightly more bearable. This sense of community is a topic of great interest to social historians who study childhood. Did these boys form a subculture? The evidence points to a resounding yes. Despite the master's attempts to keep you isolated and competitive, a powerful sense of group identity emerged. You were all climbing boys, a unique and despised tribe. This shared identity was your only shield against the dehumanizing nature of the work. However, this brotherhood is not a simple, happy one. The cellar is a brutal environment, and your master often rules by pitting you against each other. He might offer an extra crust of bread to the boy who finishes his climbs the fastest. This turns you from comrades into competitors. A moment of kindness one evening can be replaced by a moment of bitter rivalry the next morning. If you are struggling with a climb, another boy might be sent to help you, but his help might feel more like a threat, a reminder that if you fail, he is there to take your place. There's also a hierarchy. The older, more experienced boys hold the power. They get the slightly better sleeping spots, away from the dampest part of the wall. They might take a portion of your food if they think they can get away with it. You learn quickly to be wary, to protect what little you have. It's a microcosm of the harsh world outside, governed by strength and cunning. A little-known aspect of this cellar life is the occasional game. These are not games of fun and leisure, but games that reflect your grim reality. You might have contests to see who can hold their breath the longest, or you might play a game called Heads and Grubs, where you practice maneuvering your body into the contorted positions needed for tight flues. It's play, but it's also training, a way to hone the skills you need to survive. These fleeting moments of connection are what keep you human. The shared whisper in the dark, the piece of advice, the grim nod of understanding after a particularly bad day, these are the tiny threads that bind you together. You see your own fear and pain reflected in the eyes of the other boys, and in that reflection, you find a strange sort of comfort. You are all in this together. The world outside may see you as individual specks of filth, but down in the cellar, in the dark, you are a collective. You are the brotherhood of the soot. While you are trapped in the daily grind of survival, unaware of the larger world, voices are beginning to be raised on your behalf. You are the subject of poems, pamphlets, parliamentary debates, and public meetings. A slow, agonizingly slow, movement for your liberation is taking shape. This isn't the first time, as we know. The failed Act of 1788 was the beginning, but in the 1820 seconds, 30 seconds, and 40 seconds, the campaign gains a new and powerful momentum. The reformers are a diverse group of people, driven by a mixture of religious conviction, humanitarian outrage, and a belief in social progress. There are the poets. William Blake, in his famous poem The Chimney Sweeper, written back in 1789, gave you a voice, albeit a literary one. He contrasted the child's innocence your chimneys I sweep, and insert I sleep with the hypocrisy of a society that praised God while allowing such suffering. Later, writers like Charles Dickens and Charles Kingsley would use their novels to shine a light on your plight. Makes a passing but memorable reference to the cruelty of the trade, and Kingsley's The Water Babies is a full-blown allegorical fantasy dedicated to your cause. These works of fiction reached a massive audience, planting a seed of guilt in the public consciousness. Then there are the tireless campaigners. Men like Lord Shaftesbury, then known as Lord Ashley, a deeply religious aristocrat who made it his life's mission to fight for the rights of working children. He spent decades in Parliament, introducing bill after bill, gathering evidence, and making passionate, thundering speeches that detailed your suffering. He would describe the fires lit under your feet, the cancers that grew on your skin, the graves you filled. He was your most powerful and persistent champion. These reformers used a new and powerful tool: data. They didn't just rely on emotional appeals. They formed committees, interviewed doctors, coroners, and former sweeps. They compiled statistics on mortality rates. They meticulously documented cases of death and injury. This mountain of evidence was hard to ignore. Or did the sentimental stories and poems? The answer is probably that both were needed. The data gave the outrage a foundation of fact. A lesser-known but crucial part of the campaign was the role of the Quakers. The religious society of Friends was at the forefront of many social reform movements, and they took up the cause of the chimney sweeps with quiet, determined efficiency. They organized local committees, printed and distributed pamphlets, and encouraged a boycott of master sweeps who still used boys. Their grassroots activism was vital in building pressure from the bottom up. The campaign also used visual propaganda. Engravings and illustrations began to appear in newspapers and pamphlets, depicting you in harrowing situations, stuck in a flue, being beaten by your London street. The famous artist George Cruikshank, who illustrated many of Dickens's novels, produced a powerful series of prints showing the life of a chimney sweeper. For the first time, a largely literate public could see, in stark black and white, the reality that had previously been hidden inside their own walls. But all this noise, all this passionate debate in London's halls of power and its printing presses, barely reaches you. You cannot read the pamphlets. You will never hear one of Lord Shaftesbury's speeches. Your world is the cellar and the flue. You might hear a garbled rumour from your master, who will complain bitterly about the do-gooders and meddlers trying to ruin his trade. He will tell you these people want to take away your home and your food, and leave you to starve. Closed world, you might even believe him. Your life becomes a political football, in a game you don't understand. Your suffering is a point of debate, a social question to be discussed by well-meaning ladies in their drawing rooms and stern-faced gentlemen in their clubs. They are fighting for you, but you are an abstraction to them, a symbol of industrial Britain's sins. You are the climbing boy who calls a tragedy. The fact that you are also just a boy named Tom, or Sam, or Will, who is cold and hungry and scared, is a reality they can only grasp from a distance. The shouts of the reformers are a storm raging far over your head. Down in the darkness of the chimney you can't hear a thing. There comes a day when the thing you have been taught to fear growing bigger finally happens. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow creeping process. You start to notice that your ragged trousers are shorter, that your shoulders feel broader, and then, one morning, you face a flue that you have climbed a dozen times before, and it feels different. It feels different. You try to force your way in, but your hips or your shoulders, now wider by a crucial half-inch, refuse to fit. You might panic, thinking you've done something wrong. You try a different angle, but it's no use. You are simply too big. You have to back out of the fireplace defeated, and face your master. He looks at you, his eyes narrowing. He knows the signs. He might make you try another, wider chimney, but the result is the same. Your days as a climbing boy are over. You have aged out. Your primary value, your small size, is gone. This moment is a terrifying turning point. Your entire identity, your purpose in the world for as long as you can remember, has been to climb. Now, you are useless for that task. Your master, who has fed and housed you in his own grim way, now sees you as just another mouth to feed, an unprofitable burden. What happens next depends entirely on the character of your master and the specifics of your apprenticeship agreement, if such a thing even formally exists. The 7-year term of indenture was often just a fiction. In the best-case scenario, your master might keep you on. You are too big to climb, but you are not too big to carry the tools, to lay out the soot sheets, or to help haul the heavy sacks of soot at the end of the day. You become a journey sweep and assistant. You will be the one banging on doors, shouting up the flues at the new, smaller boys who have taken your place. You will watch them, their faces streaked with tears and soot, and see a painful reflection of your own past. You are now part of the machinery of oppression, a cog in the system that broke you. But many masters would not be so generous. They have no use for a lanky, awkward teenager who can no longer earn his keep by climbing. He might simply tell you to pack your things, which amount to nothing, and get out. You are turned out onto the street, perhaps at the age of 13 or 14, with no money, no family to return to. They may have moved or died, or simply won't take you back, and no skills other than the one you are now too big to perform. The historical evidence on this is scattered but grim. Parish records and police reports from the era show a significant number of homeless teenagers who were former sweeps. They were particularly vulnerable, often physically stunted or partially disabled by their years of climbing, making them unsuitable for heavy labor. They were caught in a terrible limbo. Their bodies were too big for the chimney, but too broken for anything else. The debate among historians is about the scale of this problem. How many boys were simply cast aside and what happened to them is a demographic black hole. Some undoubtedly fell into petty crime to survive. Others may have found work as manual laborers in the factories or on the docks. Their past as a sweep a hidden shame. A significant number, looking for food and shelter, likely joined the army or the navy, where a physically damaged but living body was still of some use. The military's recruitment records are one of the few places historians can sometimes trace the faint trail of a boy's life after the chimney. The strange, little-known outcome for some was to remain in the trade, but in a different capacity. If you were particularly tough or cunning, you might save up what little you could, and one day become a master sweep yourself. You would buy the apprenticeship of a small, terrified boy from a desperate family, set him up in your cellar on a pile of soot sacks, and the cycle would begin anew. You would become the very thing you once feared. This was the only career ladder available to you, a promotion that required you to inflict the same suffering on another that was inflicted upon you. So you stand at a crossroads. Your childhood, such as it was, is definitively over. The world of the flu is closed to you forever. You look at your own hands, calloused and soot-stained, and realize they are the hands of a man now, not a boy. But you have the body of a broken man and the experience of a traumatized child. The future is a terrifying, empty space, a darkness far wider and more uncertain than any chimney you have ever climbed. Let's say you are one of the ones who gets turned out. You are standing on a London street corner, perhaps 14 years old, with nothing but the ragged clothes on your back. The city, which you once knew from its rooftops, now seems alien and hostile from this new perspective. You are no longer a sweep. You are a nobody. What do you do now? Where do you go? The paths available to you are narrow and treacherous. Your body, shaped by the chimney, dictates your options. Your stunted growth and weakened lungs might disqualify you from jobs that require heavy lifting, like working on the docks or in construction. Your hacking cough and pained walk are not the marks of a desirable employee. Many former sweeps gravitate towards what they know: the streets. You might try to make a living as a mudlark, scavenging the banks of the Thames at low tide for anything of value: scraps of metal, coal, old rope. It's a miserable, filthy existence, but one you are grimly suited for. You are already used to the cold, the damp, and the dirt. Or you might fall into the world of petty crime. A boy who knows how to move quietly, who is used to the dark, and who can slip through narrow spaces has a certain skill set. You might be recruited by a Fagin-like character to pick pockets or to act as a lookout. The camaraderie of a street gang might feel like a distorted echo of the brotherhood of the cellar. It's a life of constant fear, with the ever-present threat of the police and the even more terrifying prospect of prison or transportation to Australia. As mentioned, for many the military was the most viable escape. The Army and the Royal Navy were always hungry for new recruits and didn't ask too many questions. They offered the promise of a bed, 3 meals a day, and the uniform luxuries you have never known. The brutal discipline of military life might even seem like a step up from the arbitrary cruelty of a master sweep. But at least this one comes with a steady wage and a chance to see the world beyond the smoky confines of London. The number of former sweeps who ended up fighting in the Crimean War or policing the vast British Empire is impossible to calculate, but anecdotal evidence suggests it was significant. The historical record is frustratingly silent on the individual fates of most of these boys. They were the anonymous dust of society. Historians have to piece together their likely trajectories from court records, military archives, and the writings of social reformers. The central question they grapple with is one of social mobility. Did any of these boys ever truly escape their past, or did the damage done in their childhood permanently trap them at the bottom of the social ladder? The overwhelming evidence suggests the latter. There is a small, strange subset of former sweeps who found a peculiar niche. They became soot merchants. They knew the business from the inside out. They knew where to collect the best quality soot and how to sell it to farmers. They would act as middlemen, buying the soot from the master sweeps and handling the distribution. It was a way to stay connected to their old world, but on their own terms, without ever having to climb again. And what of your mind? What are the mental scars you carry? You are likely deeply institutionalized, used to being told what to do, where to go, and when to eat. The freedom of the streets can be as terrifying as it is liberating. You might suffer from what we would now call post-traumatic stress disorder. Nightmares of being trapped in the dark are common. A sudden loud noise might make you flinch. You are wary of authority, yet desperate for security. A little-known psychological effect observed by some reformers was a profound sense of worthlessness. your entire life, your value is tied to your ability to perform a single, dangerous task. Now that you can no longer perform it, you may feel you have no value at all. This deep-seated lack of self-worth could be the most debilitating legacy of the chimney. You navigate this new life with a survivor's cunning. You learn the city's rhythms, the best places to beg, the shelters that offer a piece of bread, the corners where the police are less likely to bother you. You might see your old master on the street, trailing a new, tiny apprentice behind him. You might feel a surge of anger or jealousy, or maybe just a profound, empty sadness. That was your life, and now it's gone. Your future is a blank page, but one that is already stained with soot. The path you take, whether it leads to a soldier's barracks, a prison hulk, or an early grave in a pauper's cemetery, was largely determined the day you were sold. You survived the chimney, but now you must survive the world, and the world has little time or sympathy for a used-up, broken tool. The end of your era doesn't come with a single dramatic event. It's a slow, grinding process of social change, political will, and technological adoption, a battle that has been raging in the background for your entire life. The tide finally, definitively turns in the 1860 seconds. The campaign led by Lord Shaftesbury reaches a fever pitch. The stories are too horrific, the evidence too overwhelming, for society to ignore any longer. A particularly tragic case in 1863 captures the public's imagination and outrage. The details are grim, involving the death of a young boy in a flue, and it becomes a cause célèbre, galvanizing public opinion. In 1864, Parliament passes a new and much stronger act. This one doesn't just regulate, it aims to criminalize the practice. It makes it illegal for a sweep to employ any child under the age of 10 in their business, in any capacity. More importantly, it gives the police the power to arrest any sweep found with a child who appears to be under the age of 16 on the job. And it imposes heavy fines and the threat of imprisonment. But even this law is not enough. The master sweeps are stubborn. They continue to find loopholes to use their own young sons unofficially, or to intimidate homeowners into demanding a boy. The practice goes underground, becoming more secretive but not disappearing entirely. The final nail in the coffin comes in 1875, with the Chimney Sweepers Act. This is the one that works. It is championed once again by the tireless Lord Shaftesbury, now an old man who has dedicated his life to this cause. The key innovation of this act is simple but brilliant. It makes the homeowner liable. Under the 1875 Act, any homeowner who knowingly allows a child to climb their chimney faces a hefty fine. And crucially, it requires all chimney sweeps to be licensed by the police. To get a license, they have to prove they are not employing children. This shifts the entire dynamic. Suddenly, it's not just the sweep who is at risk, but the respectable middle-class family who hires him. The fear of a fine and a public scandal is a powerful motivator. The demand for climbing boys dries up almost overnight. When homeowners start refusing to let children on their property, our master sweeps have no choice but to finally, reluctantly, adopt the mechanical brush. The invention of George Smart, which has been waiting in the wings for over 70 years, at last becomes the industry standard. The historical debate here focuses on why this last act succeeded where all others failed. Was it the licensing system, the punishment of homeowners, or was it simply that society's values had finally changed enough to make the practice intolerable? Most historians agree. It was a combination of all three. The lead only worked because the public was finally ready to accept it. The decades of campaigning had done their slow, steady work. For you, now a grown man, this change is a distant rumble. You might read about it in a newspaper, or hear men talking about it in a pub. You might feel a strange sense of vindication, a bitter satisfaction that the world has finally caught up to the injustice you endured, or you might just feel a numb detachment. The law has come too late for you. A little-known consequence of the final ban was the brief, chaotic period of transition. The old master sweeps, who had built their entire business model on child labor, struggled to adapt. Many went out of business, replaced by a new generation of machine sweeps. The trade professionalized, becoming less a form of indentured servitude and more a regular job. The sight of a small, soot-covered boy trailing the master sweep, once a common part of the London streetscape, begins to disappear. Within a generation, it becomes a thing of the past, a dark chapter in the history books. People start to look back on the era of the climbing boys with a sense of horrified disbelief. How could we have ever allowed such a thing, they ask, conveniently forgetting their own recent complicity. The black stain of the climbing boys is slowly, painstakingly scrubbed from the nation's conscience. The chimneys are still there, silent witnesses in the walls of London's old houses. But they are now cleaned by machines, their dark, twisting passages no longer a place of terror for small children. The smoke still rises from the rooftops, but it is no longer tinged with the smoke of a small, lit fire in the hearth below, an encouragement for a terrified boy to keep climbing. The era of the human brush is over. The silence and the flues is, at long last, a silence of peace. And so our journey through the soot shadows comes to a gentle close. The story fades, like the last embers of a dying fire, and the city of the past recedes. Feel the hard edges of that world soften now, blurring into the quiet landscape of your own mind. The rasping coughs grow distant, the cold of the cellar warms, and the oppressive darkness of the flue dissolves into the peaceful dark of your own room. You can let go of the grit and the grime, the fear and the hunger. They were just echoes in a story, whispers from a time long past, and they have no power here. Here, there is only stillness. The air you breathe is clean and cool, filling your lungs with ease and calm. There are no chimneys to climb, no masters to fear. There is only the soft weight of your blanket, the gentle hum of the world outside your window, and the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing. You are safe, you are warm, and you are drifting now, drifting on a quiet tide, away from the noise of history and into the deep, silent harbor of your own dreams. Let the current carry you. There is nothing left to do but rest. The end of the article. Good night.